All right. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and get us kicked off. I know everybody's time is very valuable, and I want to get us started as close to on time as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. I'm going to share my screen, and if everybody will just bear with us, we've switched from WebEx to Zoom here. We've moved into the 21st century, so I'm going to attempt this, and hopefully you are seeing my screen. Okay. First and foremost, I want to welcome everybody to the first Build Back Better Together Built in Natural Environment Focus Team meeting. So I want to thank everybody for, again, spending some valuable time with us to talk about the recovery process and your ideas for gathering those. So just a quick preview of what I'm hoping to do tonight. I wanted to first of all welcome everybody, which I've done, and give everybody a quick meeting protocol as we go through this. So we're going to we're doing this virtually, so this is a little bit awkward for me conducting a meeting virtually. So I do apologize for that, but trying to really make sure that as we go through this, if when you talk and the big session or the breakout sessions, just make sure that you identify yourself, and that way we know who you are and who you're representing or not representing. Anything you want us to know, that's totally fine. But I just want to make sure that we're all we don't want to take anything for granted. So I broke my own rule. I should have probably done that. Hello, I'm Jeff O'Brien. I'm with Louisville Metro Government. Allison Smith is helping me run the meeting. She's also on the Develop Louisville team. So I just want to welcome everybody. So we're going to do a brief introduction of the co-chairs, and then we're going to review the process, talk about some upcoming opportunities for racial toolkit training, give a brief review of the existing plan, and then the most important part of the night is the breakouts. That's where we're going to spend the bulk of the evening on the breakout session. So really wanted to let everybody just kind of see what we're going to do today and going forward. The co-chairs, many of you are on here. These are our co-chairs in this group. So Nick Dandra from UPS, Gina Dunlap, Councilwoman Cindy Fowler's here, Dan Mann, who represents the Airport Authority. Kurt Mason is a longtime USDA rep and is also on our Louisville Jefferson County Environmental Land Trust Board. Gretchen Milliken with our Director of Advanced Planning and Sustainability. You've heard from me, and Allison Smith. Vaughn Smith is representing One West. J.C. Stites is on the TARC board and a great advocate of the built environment. Cindy Sullivan is our great tree advocate, and we've got her here. So, and then Ward Wilson, who is with Kentucky Waterways Alliance. So,
and me, Jeff.
Okay. Oh, and I'm sorry. And Kathy Dykstra, who keeps getting left off the slide. So Gretchen had asked me this question earlier. Kathy Dykstra with Family Scholar House is also here, and I'm so sorry, Kathy. For some reason, you weren't in my original presentation, so I will make that correction as soon as we get done with this. So that's what we have. That's who we have tonight, and hopefully, as we get in our breakout sessions, the co-chairs can tell you a little bit more about themselves and what they are doing. And also, right now, leading breakout sessions, we have myself, Allison, Gretchen, and Gina Dunlap. So if any of the other co-chairs want to lead a breakout session, we're happy to do that. And if you want to text or you put that in the chat box to Allison or I, we're happy to make that happen. So thank you so much for your service and helping us plan our recovery. Okay, a brief overview of the Build Back Better Together process. Just so you know, the goal of this is to provide responses to the racial justice protests and the COVID-19 pandemic, both of which are still ongoing, but we're really need to be thinking about what our next steps are. Again, we're hoping to better position the city for the global reset of economies and societies as we work through these major issues in our community and across the globe, really. I mentioned this and it was going through the agenda that we are talking about explicitly advancing equity in our community, and I'll talk about that as I get into our plans too. So there are going to be some opportunities for learning about Louisville Metro government's racial equity toolkit. We will be employing that as we look at any recommendations that come out of this group. So those will be online soon, and we'll let the group know when those are available. Kendall Boyd, our Chief Equity Officer, is working to put those a brief presentation together, and we'll make those available to everybody online. But wanted to know that that was going to be an opportunity that everybody had. So the other question that we get about the Build Back Better Together process is identifying what's the outcome of the overall process going to be. Whoops, sorry about that. The overall process is to really identify some near and short-term actions and policies. So these are what we call the quick wins. So what are some things that we can do quickly? Is it whether it's remaking our street, planting trees, addressing housing instability, et cetera. We are happy to hear any thoughts on that. We also want to take a deep dive at our existing plans. So really accelerating and reprioritizing those plans and those agendas to make sure that we are being explicit and focused on equity and in the recovery process, and making sure that we are being resilient too. Again, identifying any gaps in those plans as they might have existed in light of the current conditions, and then developing the policy agenda that furthers equity in our community. And then finally, we want to leverage our partnerships across the community to implement those actions. Okay, so just real quick overview. This is from the guiding document. So I was going fast the other day when I sent out the meeting details, and I meant to give you guys the guiding document, and I of course forgot to do that. And under the guise of not wanting to send out more emails than was necessary, I will follow up with that guiding document and the full process document so that you see those, and you'll have those, and along with a meeting summary of this meeting. So those are my 3 follow-up items that you'll get from me probably tomorrow from this meeting. So the documents we have, the Vision Louisville document, which is really the 20-year plan, look at our built environment, see what big ideas could help us shape the environment. Some things that have come out of that already are the cultural path, the Move Louisville plan, which is down below, and the BRT that was in that plan were some of the things that were mentioned in that Vision Louisville document that have come to fruition, amongst other things. And I know several of you on this call participated in that Vision Louisville process. The Resilient Louisville plan that was released last year, really looking at the chronic shocks and stresses in our community, and how do we better position ourselves to think about those things, both in terms of societal upheavals and changes in our climate. Plan 2040 is the official comprehensive plan for the city, and that really introduces 5 CHASE principles. So now as we develop any sort of planning document for our city, we are looking at these 5 CHASE principles. You'll hear the Metro team refer to those CHASE principles, and just so everybody knows what CHASE is, it's connected, healthy, authentic, sustainable, and equitable. Those are the principles we use to guide our planning efforts, at least in Develop Louisville. Move Louisville is the multimodal transportation plan. Again, the Dixie Highway project, the Broadway study for any of those working on that. Those are some key things that came out of the Move Louisville plan. Our friends at MSD have a critical repair plan, which really shows the need for new facilities and repairs to those facilities across MSD system. And then on the environmental side, we've done a lot of planning on the environment, a lot of things that have come out recently. We have the emissions reduction plan from 2018, where we set a goal of reducing our carbon emissions by 80% by 2050. The Prepare Louisville plan, which came out earlier this year, which really identifies strategies to address and mitigate impacts of climate change explicitly. Our urban heat management study which was the first of its kind study done in the nation that looks at the impacts and solutions to reduce, and then tree canopy assessment. So that's, we are in process of updating that, but that along with Trees Louisville is in process of updating that. So really that study showed just the true dire nature of our tree canopy. And then finally, our city's first sustainability plan really kind of set an agenda for identifying things that we needed to improve across the city to improve the community's sustainability environmentally. Gretchen, Allison, did I miss any points or anything that you think is important, or any of our other co-chairs, did I miss anything that you all thought was important in that overview of our plans? I know many of you worked on those.
No, I think you covered it with the big overview.
Great. Okay, I know that's a lot, and we'll send out more detailed information after this meeting. So lastly, I wanted to we're really to a point of the breakout sessions, and we've really kind of worked to identify some big questions to get us started. I don't like spending a lot of time talking to people, so I really wanted to get everybody started in the breakout sessions and thinking about some questions that as we think about recovery. So really, if we want to move to those, Allison or Gretchen or any of the other coaches have anything they want to say or ask any questions at this time, we can do that, or we can move right into the breakouts.
Jeff, you might want to just read what the questions are. So,
oh, that's right. I thank you for reminding me we have call-in users. I do appreciate that. So our questions are, we have 3 questions, and the idea is we're going to go into at least 4 breakout sessions here. And so everybody's going to start with a different, oh, we have 6. We're going to have 6. So everybody's going to start with a 7. I can't count. Thank you. Thank you for helping my math. It's not great these days. We are going to start with 7 breakout sessions. And so everybody's going to start with another question, with a primary question, and then we'll move on to the next question. So the first question is what can we emphasize and prioritize from existing plans focusing on recovery? In what ways are these existing plans in alignment or contradictory? The second question is, how can we enhance existing projects to be focused on recovery and long-term success? Are there ways to review or revisit recent or ongoing investments using a post-COVID lens to ensure viable outcomes going forward? And some examples of some projects that we've provided are the Lynn Family Soccer Stadium, the Urban League Sports and Learning Complex, the Rhodia property that Metro Government just released an RFP for, that's at 11th Street. And then the Urban Government Center property, the Madison Street Warehouse at 30th and Muhammad Ali, and then the 18th and Broadway commercial development are some examples. And there's others out there. We just pulled those out of some primary high profile examples that we know people will probably want to talk about. So we've got those out there. And then the third and final question is, how could a framework for evaluating future Metro supported investments prioritize resilience and equity? And what would that framework look like? And so those are the 3 questions that we're going to ask in the breakout sessions. And so we're going to assign people to breakout rooms now, and we will reconvene in about 30 minutes, and you'll be called back. So we are going to do that now.
And I'll just give a heads up. So there are 7 breakout groups. Breakout group 1 will be led by Jeff O'Brien. Breakout group 2 will be led by Julie Donna. Breakout group 3 will be led by Gretchen Milliken. 4 will be led by Gina Dunlap. 5 will be led by Melanie Long. 6 will be led by Cindy Sullivan. And 7, I'm putting you on the spot, Kathy Dykstra. We're going to ask that you facilitate that one since you're a co-chair. I will give a 2-minute warning when we're ready to come back, and I'll set it for about 30 minutes. So if you have any issues, please message me.
Hello, Allison.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I'm driving and zooming. I'm gonna try to.
Careful. All right, I'm going to assign you to a breakout group, Ward. It looks like you came in afterwards, but you should get the invite right now.
For a lot of this stuff, do we have any sense of how that is going to play into this process?
That's a really good question, Mark, and I think that it's going to.
I'm a citizen.
Great. Charlotte, how? Okay, got it.
No affiliation?
No affiliation. I do work, but I don't want to say that right now. For who?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, no, perfectly fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
On the corner of Main and 6th. I've worked with Gretchen on several projects over the last few years. One of those right now we're working on the Butchertown New
Denise, can you hear us? You're on mute. Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I think we've got a great plethora.
Change the land development code, and please everybody support that, because everyone who worked on the comprehensive plan, we finally gave those that teeth enough to break the racist bug.
Initiative when I was watching Mayor Fisher's town halls, and I asked how can the community get involved and support through this effort. So I'm
Or else. Is that helpful?
So Kathy,
Yes.
I might add in there on a
Um, the this is it's such a big question, and it's such a this is such an incomprehensible time that and my brain is so limited in capacity that I may not get this out right, but so the studies that have been done over the last 5 to 10 years around sustainability, around health equities and health inequities, around heat, around tree canopy, all of them basically converge in West Louisville. West Louisville is disproportionately affected in every one of those dimensions. In terms of, as an example, heat. It's a big. If you look at the heat study, it's very concentrated in West Louisville, probably in part because of the lack of tree canopy. Also, health outcomes in West Louisville are, as the mayor and all of us become aware, the health outcomes, the life expectancy between 40203 and 40222 is radically different. And then we have the underlying, larger underlying issue that has exploded back into our consciousness in the last 2 months about historic racism, structural racism, and again, West Louisville is ground zero for that. The redlining study that Gina Dunlap was instrumental in putting together. West Louisville has been disinvested, has been dissed in every way for over 75 years, over really a century. And so it seems to me like if you now think of it in terms of different spotlights with different colored filters on them, they all converge in one place, and that is approximately at the intersection of 26th and Broadway. So I think that one project that is so important is the project that began maybe 2 years ago at 18th and Broadway, alongside the project that's just been completed, the YMCA. But the larger question is around economic development. And it would seem like the opportunity here is for economic development to focus on recreating West Louisville as a green, habitable, and sustainable environment. And what better a way to share the wealth, so to speak, than for that economic development to be driven by the residents themselves. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, thank you for sharing, Jack. Yeah, what I'm hearing is that really we should be focusing our recovery on the West Louisville, and specifically on economic development there.
Well, economic development and making and addressing all of the underlying inequities, environmental, economic, and health.
Mhm. Yeah, all right. Any other comments on that one? Any other thoughts?
So Alice, are we going in order of our group number?
I am not sure I'll be, yes, we can do that. Yeah, so we'll wait for everybody to come back and then, yeah, that'll work.
Allison, do we have everybody back?
No, I'm just sending out another message right now. We got about half.
All right, thank you.
And then we can just report out the group number if you want. That means you'll go first, Jeff.
Okay.
I think we're just waiting on one more group. And it looks like we have everyone back.
Okay. All right. Okay. So are you ready for us to report out?
Yes, Jeff, if you want to start, you were group one.
Okay. Group one. So I will give the report out for group one. We had a really robust conversation, and really we talked about everything from the land development code to MSD's critical infrastructure plan and one-way and two-way streets. But just focus on four of the big key takeaways that we had in the conversation was number one, a need for flexibility going forward as we think about regulations and policies in our built environment. The need to reduce barriers. So we talked a lot about how do we really need to go back to the old restaurant rules that we had in place, given the new temporary relaxation we've made, and really need to think about those barriers in terms of the point about making sure that Louisville is in the conversation with as the nation recovers. A real need to focus on the big picture and we can think about individual projects, but really thinking about those interstitial moves that we make to help support those projects. So thinking about, making sidewalks and things like that necessary, making those improvements in addition to the projects. We talked a lot about the soccer stadium and how that looks and feels. And then last but not least, talking about how we get new voices in the conversation. So really thinking about, we have a lot of people that are like-minded in this group, and really thinking about, can we focus on actions to get more people drawn into the conversation, not just in Build Back Better Together, but in engaged overall. So that's the report out from group one. Thank you, Allison.
Group two, Julie Donna, do you or someone from your group want to report out on your conversation, please?
Yeah, I can do the report out. So we have, we discussed and really all agreed that everything kind of converges around West Louisville when it comes to looking at these plans and seeing where we need to focus our energies and our resources in. And so, but we did also say that we need to take these plans and go to the community and ask if they're still valid with them. And that's not something that we can just decide independently. But the digital divide, of course, was also brought up as a barrier to really engaging with some people in West Louisville and communities that are hit really hard by the digital divide. And we kind of then moved on to looking at how we can analyze what we're investing in and where we're focusing our resources, and decided that we said that we need to analyze the impact of what these projects are consistently across all departments, across no matter where these plants are originating from, and just look at where the greatest benefit and where the greatest benefit is going, and making sure it's going to where the greatest need is. And so to develop a matrix that looks at that type of analysis would be an effective strategy for that. And an environmental justice policy is also something that we talked about, that could be a lens to look at all of these projects through.
Great, thank you, Julie. Gretchen, you led Breakout Group 3. Oh, did someone want to add something? No? Okay. Gretchen, are you ready to report out?
You're muted.
Sorry, I was trying to look at the PowerPoint and the question we were tackling, and I couldn't get back to Zoom. Yes, we were looking at the third question. We didn't really get any others. That was the one we really kind of honed in on. We started off by kind of just with the group discussing what resilience meant and what equity meant, so that we felt like we were all on the same page. Resilience being, things that last the test of time, can handle the wear and tear, that are, built to last in terms of infrastructure, but also are sustainable in terms of the economy, and also, sustainable kind of in a more holistic sense. In terms of the definition of equity, we talked about having a level playing field. Access was a very important word that we used. We had David Allgood on our group, and really brought the conversation around, kept talking about accessibility and disabilities, and that things that are accessible to one person are not necessarily accessible to another, and that has a lot of different meanings, both in terms of race in your economy, but also your physical abilities. And that we also talked about things being affordable. And one of the other things that we talked about in terms of equity, which was interesting, because then we kind of, did some deep dives into these questions and what a framework might look like. We always talk about things being affordable as though, we are going to lower the rates to meet people where they're at. And talked about turning that on the other way around, and why aren't we're building people up so that they can, instead of talking about affordable housing, why aren't we talking about living wages so that everybody has access to housing? Kevin Dunlap pointed out that housing costs the same whether or not you're building at market rate or whether you're building it affordable. And that if we should be building up people's income and having livable wages so that everybody has access to housing and other things. In talking a little bit more about a framework, we didn't really outline anything specifically, but we did talk about that it would need to be flexible. To have kind of a rigid framework to go into this is not the way to approach it, because every situation is different. But knowing that the first thing that you would ever want to do is when you're going into a situation or a project is understanding where you are, where the community is, what the history is, what the background is, taking all that into account before moving forward, because it's not going to be a one size fits all. You can have a lot of, check boxes that you're going to check along the way. But if you don't understand the situation that you're in and all the different variables involved, then it's never going to be sustainable in the long run. The other out was in terms of looking at projects in the future, is having shared services. That idea of kind of having a 15-minute community where you might not have all the services at your, right where you are at, but having things like a laundromat or an internet cafe or community meeting spaces or a grocery or library or dry cleaner, or these things that bring communities together. And instead of everybody having their own, that these, a number of resources could be shared. And that would, kind of help make a community more resilient and equitable in the long run. And anybody on my team is welcome to chime in if I have forgotten something.
Mark?
No, I wasn't raising my hand. That's the clap emoji.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. We're all still learning. Bear with me.
This is David Allgood.
Move on to Breakout 4, which was Gina Dunn.
Allison David had a comment.
Oh, I'm so sorry, David.
All right. I don't know if this might be early stages, but I also kind of like to see if we could start using the terminology affordable, accessible housing all one. When we talk about affordable, is if it's affordable and I can't get in the door, then it's really not any good to me. It might be able to pay for the rent, but if it's not accessible structurally, then it's not going to do any good for me at all. So I'd like for us to start using affordable, accessible housing.
Thank you, David. That's a great point. We'll move on to Group 4. Gina, would you like to share out for us?
Yes, we had a really good, I think, thoughtful conversation. We sort of got warmed up thinking about the relationship of the built to natural environment to, this concept of post-COVID recovery. And some really things came out of that, some really good things came out of that discussion. So thinking about connectivity, like walkability, where we live and our ability to actually, be a pedestrian and get to places, but also larger scale road infrastructure. In terms of the relief funds that are coming from the federal government and pouring into our ability to maintain our road infrastructure, that also connects to workforce development and economic development, making sure that people have jobs as well as ensuring the condition of our roads and highways. There's a connection, to education. The concept of outdoor classrooms came up, from the parents' perspective with the NTI 2.0 that I believe JCPS is going with. The ability to establish a comfortable outdoor space for our students, to get their classroom instruction, but also having access to the internet or Wi-Fi in an outdoor environment while they're doing it is a different form and interpretation of connectivity, meaning that we've got the digital infrastructure in the right places to support that type of utilization. And then the impact of outdoor recreation on our physical and mental health. People are choosing outdoor recreation more frequently now. Things like being on the river and therefore protecting our waterways, making sure that, things are safe as more people are going to be gravitating towards those forms of recreation. And then access in terms of, what does it cost, to rent a pontoon and take a leisurely throw, fishing licenses and things like that. It brings to mind the cultural pass. Maybe we should be entertaining the thought of a natural pass, meaning that, we're reducing or eliminating fees to make sure that that's not a financial burden for people to take advantage of our natural resources. There was a recommendation that came out to create a single web page that includes a link to every plan that's under discussion just for ease of access. So we would recommend doing like a plan, library. And also with regard to the plans, many of us have not had the opportunity to dive deeply into all of the plans that were suggested or that exist. So as sort of a first level, the idea came about doing a crosswalk, right? And maybe just focusing on the executive summary. And that's what they exist for, is to give you a quick, overview of what's in the 80-page report or the 100-page report. You can dive right into the recommendations or the findings. And I'm suggesting, and I think I'm going to throw y'all in it too, we suggested maybe you just start with 2. Don't try to, eat the whole elephant or whatever, but just start with maybe, looking at the executive summaries in 2 plans and looking at the consistencies or maybe the competing elements of those. We think that'd be a good way to sort of get, you know, into the plan space. Plans that we that came up from both you know, just you know, existing plan level, but thinking about equity, is the Reimagine 9th Street plan that Advanced Planning worked so hard on. The Office of Civic Technologies Digital Inclusion Plan, which has a digital infrastructure component, and digital infrastructure tends to be in the ground. So thinking about that, you know, and applying it, you know, to many of these other projects. And then also the Vision Russell plan, which was conducted with great input, but in what seems like a whole entirely different era. But now, you know, maybe revisiting all the components of the Vision Russell plan, which was subsequently adopted as the Russell Neighborhood Plan. So maybe now's a good time to look at some of the elements that were incorporated there. And then projects that came up, particularly from an equity lens, Waterfront West at MSD is you know, working in that area, and there are plans to extend our beautiful waterfront. You know, again, that's going to impact people's ability to access natural spaces in the outdoors, and hoping that they have Wi-Fi connectivity while they're there if they need it, as well as revisit the Beecher Terrace plan, you know, just to make sure things like the parks and recreations, you know, the community centers are not necessarily active right now, and thinking ahead and being proactive about how that'll impact the final development product when it's done is something that we can invest some time in now. And so if any of my other group members want to chime in, you're more than welcome to do so. All right, they got a thumbs up. I think we're good.
All right, thank you, Gina. Next group is group 5. Melanie, would you want to give us a report out?
Sure. I don't know how I get the pleasure of following Gina. It's hard. But, and I don't want to be redundant. You all said a lot of the same things we were saying, but we did start out by talking about the evictions and people losing their utilities that are coming up really soon, if it hasn't started happening already. And it's hard to think about how we're going to fix the built environment when there are going to be a whole lot of people who are homeless or without their utilities. So that was how we started our conversation. So we were saying that we need to promote housing and business development, and we need to be intentional about racial equity when we're doing that. We can't just say, somebody said, I can't remember, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, but she said, we can't just say we made a good faith effort. We need to actually do something about making sure we have some racial equity. And we need to make sure we pay attention to the utilities and the plans they have, because particularly LG&E, they have these plans and they impact areas disproportionately. So we need to think about how LG&E is putting in their power, what they're doing, where they're doing it at. I mean, because that impacts, and that goes back to, I don't even know if internet is a utility, but I feel like it's a utility. And so we need to think about how they are putting in internet and high power internet and broadband in different places to make sure that it's more equitably distributed. Then and someone else talked about the land development code. We want to make sure that when we're looking at the land development code, it eliminates some injustice that seems to happen when we have codes that say only single family homes can be here. That eliminates a lot of people, or single family homes that are on 1 acre lots or something like that. That has an impact on who can live in certain places. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is we were kind of debating about what the changes in the work environment. We're all getting used to working from home, and I was saying how I really enjoy the fact that I can wash a load of clothes while I'm in a meeting. It's making me very happy. But how is that going to create more separation? Because the people who are able to work from home, are a different set of people than the people who have to go out into the workplace? And is that making us more siloed? So those are the things we discussed that were separate from what the other people had already said. And if anybody in my group wants to add, please do.
Great, thank you, Melanie. We appreciate it. Group 6 is Cindy Sullivan.
Yeah, I can't decide if it's easier to be number 6 or if it's more difficult, like Melanie said, because we did all discuss a lot of the same things. Economics was top of mind when we started our conversation, because we need to provide opportunities for employment in areas that have high unemployment, where people really need jobs, and we need to review existing policies through that equity lens to ensure, once again, that we've got economic inclusion. We talked a lot about housing was another thing. Transportation, of course, we talked a lot about TARC, increasing usage, vehicles, single-use vehicles, cars becoming less useful and using less of the space in downtown, for instance. So what could we do with all those surface parking lots that we've got? Perhaps turn them into areas where we could create solar energy, so that if Louisville Metro was supporting those types of investments, is that something that would benefit everyone? So that was another huge thing. Again, to Melanie's point, communication is absolutely key when you're talking about these utilities, whether it's LG&E, MSD, Public Works, because so many times we see that lack of communication creates a situation where you've done one project and then you got to go back and tear something up because somebody else is doing something. So that was a big thing. Creating partnerships, like Ward Wilson brought this one up, because when you run a nonprofit, buddy, if you want to get something done, you've got to have partners, and so that's something that we do every single day. We talked a lot about gray and green infrastructure and how important green infrastructure could be for workforce development. Tony pointed out that green jobs are really going to be the jobs of the future, whether it is solar or wind or tree canopy. I mean, those, you can't just plant a tree and walk away, you've got to maintain it. And so all of those things are really important. So that renewable energy piece was really one of the critical pieces that we talked about too. Land development code, again, revising that through the equity lens, as Metro Council has, made the resolution to do, is absolutely critical. The zoning codes, it was pointed out, are archaic, and we've got to do something about those. And we talked a lot about, where do we focus work, which a lot of you guys obviously did too. The 18th and Broadway business district is really critical. The Broadway corridor is really critical. And we've got to make sure that as we're working on these projects, we're including that valuable asset, which is green infrastructure. And I told my group that I was going to skew toward green, and if anybody wants to go ahead and pop in and add anything, that's fine too. So please do. We talked about so many.
Green.
What was that, Ward?
I just said go green. I'm totally behind you.
That's
Triple
okay.
Bottom line.
We are not surprised, Cindy. It's okay. Great, thank you very much. And our last group, Group 7, Kathy, would you like to report out on your conversation if you had anything that hasn't been mentioned so far?
Much of what we discussed has been mentioned in one way or another. Our conversation ran the gamut from sidewalks and playgrounds and natural environments to some more specific projects, like the Beargrass Creek 7 miles of waterfront, the bus system being underutilized, but how do you both socially distance in a bus shelter and prioritize the bus system as an alternative way to get to places? We talked about the Louisville Loop and the subloops and how that is both recreation and pedestrian, and how it's important that those loops actually go places people need to go, as well as serve as a way for us to see our community. We talked about some existing projects that include the Maple Street project, the Beargrass Ecological Restoration. You talked about the 18th and Broadway, and some specific things that we talked about needing to be revisited. One was simplifying the zoning process, revisiting the parking requirement for new developments. And we talked about, and I really like this idea, the idea that currently one of the reasons that surface lots are so profitable is that they're taxed differently. And if they were taxed based on their potential value, as other cities have done, that may change some of that. And as we revisit and continue to monitor commuting trends, we may be able to reclaim some of those surface lots, even a portion of a surface lot, for both green spaces and contemplative spaces, places where people can gather. And that led us to the need for many of those spaces, if not all of those spaces, to include Wi-Fi access, so that people who do not have that level of connectivity can go to a shared space to get it. Again, our conversation ran the gamut, but I don't want to be redundant. The last thing I'll mention is that the changes to downtown, now that people are not going down there, are concerning. And I lived in Louisville before 4th Street Live and remember what that was like down there when it was the Galleria. The need to both be able to socially distance, but also to have increased housing density so that people live there and then that brings business there and we still maintain a vibrant downtown, even if people are working from home and home is downtown. And anybody on our team who would like to add, please do so.
All right, thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you to everyone who stepped up and facilitated. I appreciate it. Just a reminder, you can put any comments in the chat box and that will be a record kept of that. Jeff, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Allison. And I really, again, I want to thank all of our co-chairs and everybody that has participated in this discussion today. I do appreciate your time very much. We will put summaries together and send them back out. We will also be working on getting more information out there so you all can get more feedback. I will note the email I sent earlier, there was a Google Doc. I'm hoping you were all able to access that. So if you had some feedback that you didn't feel like you could get out today, if you want to go ahead and add that, we will go ahead and include that as well. With that, I don't have anything else unless Gretchen or Allison or any of the other co-chairs have anything to say.
Can I ask
all right, well, thank you very, oh, go ahead, Gabe.
Just for mine and probably others' edification, I think it would be helpful to do maybe two things as you wrap up. One, could you run down the other work groups that are doing the same thing that we're doing? And then could you also say like what the end goal is? What is the product? What are we doing? What are we working to produce?
Right, thanks, Gabe. So there are 7 focus teams. There's one focused on economy. There's one focused on social infrastructure and investments. One which is really the not-profit philanthropic world. There is a group focused on education and workforce training. There's a group focused on sports, hospitality, and urbanism. And then there's one focused on health and safety. So those are the groups that we have, and what we're looking to do is put an action plan together to come out of this recovery. So we're looking for short-term, short and mid-term items, the quote-unquote quick wins, and then looking at any gaps that we have in our existing long-term plans. So I do appreciate that very much, that question very much, and welcome anything else that anybody has. Okay, if not, I want to thank everybody for their time, and I hope you have a pleasant evening, and we will talk again soon. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Thanks, everyone.